So we're going to be looking over the next 4 weeks at 4 different areas. I'm kind of done with New Year's resolutions because they depressed me by week 3. You kind of set yourself up for failure by aiming to do lots of things. There's a few things that I have set out to do at the beginning of the year and actually fulfilled them and done them all the way through. But very often it's just quite depressing. By about week 3, we give up, we get depressed. It's still winter, there's no signs of spring, and what's more, we've failed in our New Year's resolutions. So what I'm looking for is a subtle difference. And what I challenge you with today is to start a New Year's revolution. Just a few things that you can turn around very, very slowly. And as you know, if you just take one, if you're walking in this direction, but you just take 1 degree of a course correction, just 1 degree, in a mile's time, you're in a totally different place. So I'm talking about just turning things, just a tiny bit, a tiny 1% change that can make all the difference in the future. Some things that aren't instant with their results, but there's an instant beginning, but there's not an instant result. So the 4 areas are on a leaflet that's near you right now. It might be right underneath your backside. These aren't for you. These are for you to give to somebody. Okay, well, I would like you to not just invite somebody, but to bring them along and say, I'm not going to be over Jesus-y or over cliched or over Christian jargon. I'm going to talk at quite a down-to-earth level, and I'm going to be addressing things that would apply to people even if they're not Christians. And I'm also going to make it clear that this journey is a whole lot easier if you do have God on your side. So that leaflet is for you to take home. I've got more here. And if they all go, Sam can produce more for next week if you want. So please, we believe in growth as a church, and we believe one of the ways we can do that is through meeting people at points of need. So I've prayed about these 4 topics, and they're the ones I believe God wanted me to talk about, partly because they're a lot to do with what God's doing in my life as well. Has anybody made any New Year's resolutions this year? I won't ask you what they are. Does anyone do that? Are we all too mature, or too just like, no, I've given up on that? Yeah, good. Yeah, you've made 1, 2, 3, a few. Yeah, maybe. Okay. What do you think of the top ones? I have researched this in the past. What do you think is the top New Year's resolution? Lose weight. Yeah, lose weight. Straight after Christmas, isn't it? And for Americans, Thanksgiving as well. They've had all that food in. Oh, look, there you go. So on week 1, we're talking about revolutionising your diary. We're talking about time management. Next week, we're going to talk about family life, relationships. I'm going to bring in, I haven't actually written the talk yet, but I'm going to be talking a little bit about family life, which will apply to everybody because we've all come from a family of some sort, and the issues that brings for itself. But also I'll be talking about God's family a little bit too, so we'll be kind of crossing over into that. And in the week 3, relationships part 2, we're going to be talking about your significant other. Even if you haven't got one yet, it could apply to you. We're going to be talking about significant others. So I'm talking about your life partner, your soulmate, or your spouse, and I'm going to call it a survival guide. And I'm sorry. Yeah, it's she who needs the survival guide. My wife, my good wife there. And then on week 4, we're talking about a financial revolution. Are you still paying for Christmas by week 4? We'll be talking about that. Okay. And for all those issues, we're just trying to bring a Christian perspective and maybe challenge you just to make that slight course correction. So just listen open-mindedly and see what it is God is saying to you. Might be just 1 point. The other point, you can preach at somebody else at another time. All the way through, if you could see the next slide, I'll be asking questions around 4 boxes. Okay, so if you kind of look at that as a cross-referencing thing, think about 1 course correction that you might take. You might say, well, I'm going to get up every morning and I'm going to spend 15 minutes reading the Bible and praying, right? And then once you've decided that's what you're going to do, that's your course correction. I'm not calling it a resolution, it's a revolution. Okay, what will happen if I do? And start thinking it through and writing down what will happen if I do that. What will change about me as a person? What do I expect to see? Or if I do, what won't happen? Maybe I won't be as grumpy. Maybe I won't be a different person. You can follow that chart through, and if I don't, it's kind of a motivating carrot and stick thing. Well, if I don't, what will happen? Well, things will carry on as they were. You can start listing some of the things that will happen if you don't do it, and things that won't happen if you don't do it. I'll be talking about that a little bit more at the end. So that's going to come up every week. All right. So maybe it'll make more sense as we go along. So if we look at the next slide, are you ready? Are you ready for this this new year and this new revolutionize your diary talk? Are you ready for this? Yeah. Okay. Well done. Okay. Well, I'm ready. I'm ready. First of all, why you can't manage time. I put a little verse there at the bottom that says, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. You can't actually manage time. So we could all give up now. What I mean by that, I'm being pedantic really. You can't change the fact that time ticks at a certain pace, and you have a number of days left. We wondered how many days my mum had left when we were told what my dad has just shared with us on December the 21st. We thought that might be the last night we ever saw her. And the Bible is saying, teach us to number our days aright so that we can live with a heart of wisdom. You can't manage time. Yes, you can extend your life by not smoking. You can extend, or you can shorten your life by walking in front of a bus. But as far as time goes, you can't really manage it. You can't change it. You can't stretch it. You can't go back and change something that happened in the past, but you can't make a second last longer. So you can't really manage time. And I know I'm being pedantic, but I'm doing it for a point. What I'm trying to say is, let's not really talk about time management, because that's something we can't control. Let's talk about life management. Let's manage our lives better, because God has given us some time on earth. We don't know how long, and we should be stewards of every minute that we have. That doesn't mean we have to work in every minute, because part of stewardship of time is rest, and that's going to be my final point. So I've already given the last bit away. Building rest in. But stewardship of that and how you rest. You can rest productively. In other words, you can put a battery in an old charger and it doesn't charge very well, or you can put a battery in a good charger and it charges to 100%. And sometimes the way we rest isn't effective. For me, watching TV isn't always effective rest. Anyway, I'm going off topic, so I'll get back to my point. The next slide says why you do have enough time. And the Bible says there is a time for everything. There is a time for, but you haven't seen my schedule. You haven't seen there isn't a time for everything. I haven't time to do all this. I've got so much to do. So many demands. So many demands on my life. And all I'm doing is just existing, just getting the washing done and getting the hoovering done and getting the car maintained and just existing. How can there be a time for everything? I've got dreams I don't even have time to think about. Dreams I don't even have time to dream. You do have enough time. There's a guy who pastors a very big Baptist church in America called Rick Warren. And he says, to get mad at your schedule is like getting mad at your bathroom scales. You're the reason it reads like it does. You have enough time. He also goes on to say, if you had a bank account and every day someone deposited £86,400 into it, he says dollars, but I've changed it to pounds, £86,400 into it that you had to spend or you would lose it, you would not let that money go to waste. And that's how many seconds you have in every day. And that's how it works. It's like being given 86,400 seconds in a day. Let's not let them go to waste. Most people I've spoken to in a coaching context, I've done a bit of coaching in my time, and when they talk about time management to me, what they really want is help to learn how to cram more stuff into the same number of hours, and they're already busy as it is. And very often we spend time unpicking what it is they are doing and why they're doing it. And there's one really simple question that helps you unpick the whole thing, which I'm going to reveal in a minute. Was this a waste of time? I was sitting in my small office, not my small office, it was a shared office of 5 members of staff when I was a teacher. We would get a 15, pulls up 5 fingers. 15-minute break between 2 particular lessons in the morning. 15-minute break. Is that long enough to boil a kettle, make some coffee, and drink that coffee, and then go back to your lesson? Not really. If someone was free, it would be their duty to get that kettle on 5 minutes before the bell went, so that we could sit around. We had a nice little coffee table and 5 chairs, and we'd sit around and we'd have coffee for 15 precious minutes. One such morning, I looked up from my phone that I'd been just seeing if I got any emails, to find that my 4 other colleagues were all looking at their phones. All 5 of us had been sitting for those 15 minutes looking, well, it wasn't all of the 15 minutes, but we'd all been looking at our phones at once, in silence, coffee steaming in front of us on the table like this. Was that a waste of time or not? Was it a waste? But was it though? That was the question. It's a difficult question, because maybe I was picking up an email from someone really important. If you've got an answer to this next question, then it helps you work out what is a waste of time and what is not. But it's a difficult question. It's a powerful question. You can put the next slide on, and the question's not on it. It's a powerful question, and it can take years. The answer can take years to come by. But if you got this one question formulated, and I'm always kind of rewriting the answer, or modifying or refining my answer to this one simple question, it helps you kind of work out if something's a waste of time or not. You ready for the question? Why am I here? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Once you've worked out your purpose, it helps you filter out a whole load of things that you shouldn't be doing, because you just haven't time. And what will happen is you just don't have time for the thing that is your purpose. Okay, so I've got quite a few things that are priorities for me now. I realise that one of the reasons I'm here is to be the best possible husband I can be. But I've also worked out, and I decided for myself, that top priority for me is relationship. That relationships and people are more important than the tasks that we do together. And I've also decided, this is my own personal choice, it's not something I'm telling you to say, I'm just using this to help talk about this moment around the coffee table that I had with my friends, my colleagues, because there were colleagues that had become friends. I've also come to the conclusion that while relationships are a top priority for me, face-to-face interaction is the best way of developing that relationship. I've done emails with people and they've misunderstood me, and I've misunderstood them, and the tone's been misread. I've done texts with people and they've been ambiguous. But being in the room with someone and interacting with their body language, watching Dave nod as I speak, he's nodding off, but I can interpret it anyway. So now I've worked out why I am here. I am here to be a great husband, a good dad. I've also decided that I exist to bring people closer to God and the abundant life that He has for them. That's something I've written down as why I exist. I've decided that, and prayerfully worked that out. I exist to bring people closer to God, whether they're Christian or not, to bring people closer to God and the abundant life that He has for them. That's part of why I exist. Because of that, that helps me cut out a whole load of decisions, and it helps me say no a lot more easily. When you know your purpose, you can manage your schedule better. I nearly said manage your time, but I've said you can't manage time, so I'm not allowed to say that now, am I? So, it was the wrong thing for me to be doing. I was looking at an email that I could have responded to at any time. I don't even remember what the email was, but I remember that moment when we were all looking at our phones. And the funny thing was, we're so generous to ourselves when we make judgments. I was judging them for all being on their phones. The first thing I did was, look at all them on their phones. As soon as I looked up from my phone, I noticed they were all on their phones. And I had to step back and realise I was just as bad. So I think that was a waste of time. Another pastor of a very large church in America. In fact, if you've got a Bible app on your phone, it's probably come from his phone. From his church, sorry. The YouVersion Bible app is something he decided that they should put out as a free app to get the Bible into as many hands as possible. It's called Craig Groeschel. He put it this way: In our culture, normal people are distracted. Normal people are distracted, rarely fully present. We all have to fight getting pulled into the orbit of that constant gravity of busyness. Urgent tasks and priorities desperately cry for our attention. Maybe it's a chicken or egg situation, but I believe all that noise harms our well-being more than the legitimate stress of all the things we actually have to do. If you want to be different, then you have to live differently. Weird people learn to silence distractions and remain fully in the moment. And he says that because he's got a book called Weird, because it's based on this whole premise of if you want to carry on the way you are, carry on doing what you're doing. If you always do what you always do, you'll always get what you always got, kind of thing. So you've got to be a bit different. Or if you want to be a bit different from everybody else and stand out for the crowd, which as Christians we are meant to be, that's what I believe holiness is actually being different, standing out. We might just have to be a little bit weird. And that's what weird people do. They step back, and weird in a good way, is they step back and they notice what's going on around them, and they make choices because they have a purpose. Okay, the next slide is called urgent or important. And the Bible verse there is, be very careful then how you live. This is actually my key verse for today. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. No beating about the bush there. So there are some things that vie for our attention, but they might not be as important as some of the things that are not silently, still small voice whispering towards us. Some things appear urgent, but actually they're urgent to the person who's clamouring for your attention. They don't need to be urgent for you. And I heard one boss say, your poor planning is not my crisis. Because he gets someone ringing up saying, I've got this crisis, this thing's gone wrong, and this delivery's going, or whatever it is, and he says, well, it's because you planned poorly. I'm not going to get stressed about something you've failed to plan about. So we'll mop up the mistake, but we'll get it right next time. But another boss might have just thrown themselves into this and then got totally sidetracked from the task that they should have been doing that was far more important. So I've got another quadrant here. Have a look at this, please. Next slide, if we may. Thanks. Right, okay, so I like my quadrants, okay? And this has come from a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And if you look along the left side, you can see you've got things that are urgent and things that are not urgent, all right? Okay? You've also got along the top things that are important and things that are not important. So I'm going to give you some examples now. In the top right, we'll call that quadrant 1. They're the things you really ought to be doing. They're both pressing because it might be another person making them urgent, and they're important. Let's think about Jesus, shall we? It's a good thing to do. Because I reckon Jesus had this totally nailed. He wouldn't have known about this, well, he might have done because he was God, but he perhaps wouldn't have thought in this way, but he had these principles nailed, I believe. I think in his quadrant 1 there, which is both urgent and important, he was thinking about developing the disciples around him, because he knew he only had so long with them before he was going to finish his mission and end up in heaven again, and he knew that they would be the leaders of the first church. So it was important for him to spend time with his disciples, and it was urgent. Moving down to quadrant 2, what was not urgent for Jesus, perhaps, was... What did I write down here? I can't even remember. Oh, yeah. Because the things that aren't urgent can still be important. What might not have appeared urgent was praying. After all, he's God in human form. But Jesus often withdrew to quiet places. Now, no one asked him to do that. No one made that urgent to him. Nothing from the outside said, Jesus, you better be praying. You've got to be praying. Come on, pray now. Come on, pray now. Go away and pray. Jesus, go up that mountain and pray. Go on your own and pray. Nothing made it urgent on the outside, but he saw the importance of it, and he often withdrew. Quadrant 2, this thing about things that are important but not pressing, is a key nut to crack if you're going to move forward. This is what I've found in my own management of my own life and my own schedule, is that it's so easy to get caught up in all the things that are urgent, things that are in your inbox or phone calls that come in. And deep down inside, or at the beginning of a year, when you're reflecting on the year that went past, or the reflecting or looking forward to the year ahead, you think, well, this is going to be important to me. But nothing nudges you, nothing sets an alarm. They just go by the wayside. This point 2 here, these important things, but they don't fly up in your face. They so easily get left. What are those things for us that are really important, but they're not urgent? That's when you're starting to take control of your life. That's when you're starting to take a leadership role in your own life and your own world. In quadrant 3, things that are urgent but not important. For Jesus, I thought it might be other people's opinions of him, or what he should and shouldn't be doing, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. It was urgent because of their constant badgering, but he didn't really respond. I like the time where he bent down and doodled in the dirt. So he had this urgent need of this woman who was caught in adultery, and she was, I imagine her, kind of thrown at his feet, and he was there trying to teach. How did he respond? He was just so cool. He just bent down and doodled in the dirt. Urgent because of the situation, but actually, and he turned it into an important teaching. But he didn't allow himself to get distracted by other people's opinions or what other people were trying to get out of him. They were trying to get a response out of him. But that wasn't important to him. And the last quadrant, one that is not urgent and not important at all. For Jesus, I was thinking of the man-made interpretations of the law, like the way he took a bit of grain and rubbed it between his fingers on the Sabbath. Right, and that's now classed as work, because on the Sabbath day you have to rest. And so the powers that be had decided that even doing that was like harvesting, because you've taken a bit of corn, you've taken the outer shell off to get the husk out from the kernel out from the husk. That's harvesting. How bad is that? He didn't care about that. That wasn't urgent to him to follow those man-made interpretations of the law, and it wasn't important to him. But how many of those things in our life do we end up doing? I don't think we've time for them. Now, if you're a leader, some of those things, some of these things are in your workplace. Some of those things should just be delegated. You know, if you do have a position of responsibility, how many things do you do that you could have delegated? Okay, so we had this crisis at Christmas. Let me read to you how I wrote down what happened, the thing that Dad said. 4 days before Christmas, I was due to drive 280 miles north with my wife and 2 kids to spend Christmas with her family. Also my family, but just putting it that way. I was studying the cracked screen on my phone, wondering about getting it fixed, whilst my son was trying to explain to me a problem he was having with his games console. Then the phone rang. My mum, who lives 1 mile away, was urgently being taken to hospital in an ambulance. Now, I didn't give that diagram any thought at all at that point, but the principles within it instantly came into play. Urgent and important, mum going into hospital. Not so urgent, but still important, spending time with Andrew's family over Christmas. Remember, quadrant 2 is the hardest one to crack and the easiest one to neglect. Quadrant 3, urgent but not important, my son's issues with his games console. To him, it seemed like a matter of life and death. It was urgent to him, but it did not have to be urgent to me. Quadrant 4, not urgent and not important, the cracked screen on my phone. It's still cracked. So Andrea kind of wondered if we'd even go up north for Christmas. 280 miles is a long way when your mum's in hospital, to leave her behind. And Andrea's thinking, well, you should stay around. Maybe we should stay around. She said that a couple of times. And I'm thinking, well, Mum would actually want us to go. She'd be saying, you know, just go up there, you know, your family's important. But it was kind of tempting to think, well, I should stay around. And it might seem cold-hearted that we went away, but we kind of waited a bit longer. We waited till we knew she was safe. We knew we had had that really good news, that things were much better. So although she was still in hospital, we knew that she was okay. But another person or another John might have just felt, no, I should stay behind, should stay around. But that would have been neglecting something that was really important, especially to Andrea, but also to me, to go and spend some time with Andrea's mum, who we only see sporadically now. So it wasn't urgent, it wasn't pressing. There's in fact something else that was so urgent reduced the urgency of going home for Christmas. Call it home, you know what I mean. Going back for Christmas. There's kind of that thing going into play. But because I've decided that relationships are important and family is important, and I've decided to think this through already ahead of time, I didn't even give this a moment's thought, as I say. It kind of helped filter through. How do I manage my time? What do I do with my time? So that was just one example. So maybe with you, you think about, there's 4 different areas you might think about. Your relationships, managing how much time you spend with people you care about. I think, again, this is another quadrant 2 thing. There are people in my life who, unless I pick up the phone and ring them, I won't have any contact with them. I could easily not have contact with them for years. People I grew up with, but are very important to me. I could just ignore that because they might not make the effort too, because they might not be thinking like this. But it might just be me that gets more benefit out of that relationship than they do. So your relationships, managing your time at home. Sometimes it doesn't feel urgent to be at home, but it's very important for me to be at home at certain times of the day. So that's your relationships. The second area, your professional life, managing your time at work or managing how much of your week you give to work. You don't just give time to work when you're at work. You give time to work when you're at home, thinking about it when your son is telling you that his Xbox doesn't work and you're only half present. Managing how much time you give to work. Sometimes it's an act of faith to cut your hours because you feel like you are not going to have enough money. But sometimes God calls people to do that, to be a better mother or a better father. Challenging, very challenging, your professional life. Conversely, sometimes God challenges people to work harder and get out there and get off their butt and do some more work. What is God saying? Your personal life, managing how much time you have to yourself, how much time you spend on health, how much time you spend on fitness. Brilliant example of something that is not urgent, doesn't feel urgent at all, but highly important is your physical fitness. This is what I mean by this slight course correction that makes a massive impact in the future. Just a little bit of exercise or a little bit of cutting down on fatty foods or whatever it is that you change doesn't feel urgent at the time, but you'll know it in the future. Your spiritual life, managing how much time you spend alone with God. Another thing that's not very urgent sometimes. It's sometimes more urgent to press the snooze button, and then it becomes more urgent to get your teeth cleaned and get out of the door. Managing the time with God. So let's move on, and I've got a few pointers for managing 2015. First of all, know your purpose. That's the kind of thing I've been talking about already. Can you write down a sentence that starts with, I exist to ... in order that ... For example, I exist to be the best possible mum I can be so that my 3 sons grow up contributing something amazing to the world. Or I exist to make a load of money off my artwork so that I can significantly support charities I care desperately about. I exist to, so that I know my purpose. It might be also that you have drawn up some priorities, or underneath you know your priorities are to be a fantastic husband or wife, to be a great dad, to be somebody who contributes to church life or has a ministry outside of church or something to do outside of the home. It's a priority. That's why I'm here. That's what God's put in me. I've got a passion for something. Maybe you've just got a passion for fishing, but God wants to use that. And it's part of your priorities because God's going to use that to reach other people. I don't know. But what is your purpose? Know your purpose. If you don't know anything about your purpose, then it's time to start praying about it. If you don't know God, the first purpose you need is to be loved, to know that you're loved by a creator God who's got a plan and a purpose for you, and it's a good plan. The second thing is to start planning on purpose. Once your purpose is decided, plan your time intentionally. Think about those urgent and important things. You start to now know what's important and what's not. So if you're married, you spend time with your wife every week, or your husband. Every week you book that time and have diary meetings and make sure you plan time together, however busy you are. And you say no to other people. That's also one of my things, is about saying no. If you look at my diary, you'll see John and Andrea time slots built into every week. And if you're not intentional about this, you'll grow apart. You'll become more like a cooperative life partner than that romantic husband or wife that you married or that married you. So let your diary reflect the fact that you prioritise your children and your husband and your wife, or other things that you think are important to you. Once you know your purpose, plan your time, have diary meetings with yourself, and look through your week, and just be intentional about what you've decided is important to you. The third thing then is to learn to say no. It's a tough one for me because I don't like letting people down. And I heard one person say that, put it this way, I'm a recovering people pleaser. I don't know if any other people here are like that. They're a recovering people pleaser. I know people who would just say yes to everything and then let you down anyway because they couldn't do it. But they just didn't want to say no. You have to learn to say no. And start thinking about that quadrant. What are those things that you really should just be strong and say no to? Because if you say yes to them, you're actually saying no to something else. Because time is finite. You've only got so many waking minutes in the week. So if you say yes to something that's not really aligned with your purpose anyway, you're going to say, you automatically by default saying no to something else. And usually it's rest. Usually it's kind of the time alone that you need to recuperate and recharge. But sometimes it's other people that suffer. Learn to say no. It also means saying no to your inbox on your emails. And sometimes it can also mean saying no to the phone. I've seen people answer the phone while they've been at dinner with friends. I just think it's rude, unless it's an emergency. If you answer the phone while I'm talking to you, I will forgive you. But, I'd expect it to be quite important. If my phone rings and you're talking to me, I won't answer it. If I do, you can pull me up on it. Even if it's Andrea. I don't know, maybe not. She might have a special ringtone. Someone's just defined your email inbox as other people's schedule for your day. You can so easily, if you're the sort of person who works around email and has emails coming in, often you could just spend a lot of time responding to emails and following up things from emails, and they just lead to a to-do list. And I've learned to check emails not as they come in. I've taken notifications off my phone because you get that ping and I've got an email. It's almost like a dopamine thing. So, I've got an email, I just check them about twice a day. And then from that list of emails I've got through, I either delete them because they're spam anyway, or I just add something to my to-do list. Very rarely do I act on an email straight away. I just add it to a to-do list because I'm trying to prioritise. Say no to emails. Say no to the phone. Fourth thing is to learn to use dead time. When you have 5 or 10 minutes to spare, what do you do with them? Now, sometimes it's good just to rest and shut your eyes, but I'm talking about waiting in a queue. Sometimes I'll ask God to give me a conversation opener to someone in a queue with me. And sometimes, in fact, yesterday I was at the optician's. I had to wait 5 minutes for my appointment. And I just had this pre-test thing where they flash things in your eyes to take a photo. And I was like, wow, that was bright. And I just shut my eyes. They said, go and read some magazines or look at some glasses. And I thought, well, I don't think I need glasses. I'm just doing this for the health of my eyes. I'll go and sit down. They had these magazines. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I was the only one in that waiting area. I shut my eyes for 5 minutes and recited silently to myself the 23rd Psalm. I felt a whole lot better than if I'd have looked at cars I couldn't afford in a car magazine. Just using that dead time. If you're studying, using that dead time just to go conjugate a verb if you're learning a language, or to test yourself on something that you already know, just learning by repetition. Using dead time and bringing it alive. I've listened to hundreds of sermons and podcasts on my commute to work instead of listening to the radio. How do you use your dead time? And finally, rest. The Bible says it's useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. Psalm 127, verse 2. When Jesus would have extended periods of ministry, he always had extended periods of rest. And Rick Warren again says there's a difference between effectiveness and efficiency. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. And cutting some of the things out so that you have time for rest is so important. In fact, there is a state of rest for the people of God. A state of rest, knowing that I'm at peace with God. He loves me, even if I'm not as productive as the person next to me. There's a kind of rest in knowing that God wants me to rest. He wants me to work out of a place of rest. There should be a sense of rest and a sense almost of playfulness about our lives as we know that we trust our Heavenly Father and he wants us in that place of rest. So when you're planning your week, plan for rest. And I don't mean leave a space in your diary, write it in your diary. You know, if it looks weird just to put rest, put something else in there like just put some make up a weird acronym, you know, PPA, planned personal. I just made that up. I don't know things. Just plan that rest so that when someone rings you up or asks you to do something, you can honestly look at your diary and say, "My diary's full on that time. I can't make it," because you need that rest. That's just what I've learned anyway. It might just be me. It's not selfish to do that, because you can't serve other people if you're not right yourself. When you hear the plane stuff, when you're on an aeroplane, they tell you that all the safety stuff, they say, get your own mask on before you help someone else. You've got to get your own oxygen. You've got to get yourself right. You've got to make sure your body is healthy and your mind is at ease before you can properly serve other people and serve God. So rest, it's not selfish. Build it in. And you might need more rest than other people. I've learnt that because I'm married to Andrea, who needs loads of rest at the moment. She won't mind me saying that. Partly because of physical things that have been going on. She's had an overactive thyroid and they're still getting the levels right. But maybe just partly because of who we are as people. Some people need more rest than others. Don't feel bad about that. Get your exercise, eat healthy, and have as much rest as you need. And trust God with the rest, and just cut a load of stuff out that you're doing that's just not profitable or productive. Okay, so let's finish. Conclusion. What's on your to-don'ts list? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist. It's nice, that, isn't it? That's what you came to hear today, wasn't it? You're just a mist, a vapor trail that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Nice. So while we're here, in the short time that we have, in the light of eternity, what's on your to-don't list? What are you going to stop doing? So that's my revolution, really. It's, who am I? What's my purpose here? What's important to me? That's a nice and easier question to answer. What's important to me in the light of who we believe God is and what he thinks we should be doing and all of that? What's important to me? And what am I going to do that might not actually be urgently pressing as a need, but I've decided this is important, so intentionally I'm going to step into 2015 and my time is going to be given to the right things. And what's on my to-don't list? I'm just going to read to you. Oh, I don't need to turn the page yet. I have just about finished. I know it's cold. Okay, again, Craig Groeschel, the pastor of the church of the YouVersion Bible app, says this: when you focus on the purposes you believe God created you for, you'll have the stability to say no to some good things. You hear that? You sometimes say no to even good things. Just because it's good doesn't mean it's right for you to do. And that will give you the space to be able to say yes to the best things when they present themselves. Rather than just reacting to the waves of things that come, you can ride them with deliberate intention. James 4:14 reminds us what is your life. You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. We can't have more time, but we can live with a greater awareness of the limited time we do have. Every opportunity that arrives on your doorstep will require some decision. Every opportunity that arrives on your doorstep requires a decision. Do I let that in? Do I pass it on? If you've already decided what you value, that's what I'm talking about, getting your purpose right, you can fully enjoy each moment secure you're living the life you want. Okay, so let's just go back. Don't go back, just go on to the next slide, please. But in our minds, we're going back to this first quadrant I showed, the blue one. What'll happen if I do? For example, someone said they'd spend every Saturday morning with their kids instead of going into the office, even though they had a growling boss. And they decided, if I do, I'll get closer to my kids and they'll grow up and not drift away from me. I won't feel guilt. What won't happen is I won't feel guilty about working late at other times in the week to make up for it, and I won't lose this precious time whilst my kids are growing up. So they're trying to spend time on Saturday morning with their kids. They said, if I don't, my kids might look for other father figures, role models. My boss will think I'm just there whenever he wants me to be, and I know I will not be as happy. I won't, if I don't, what won't happen? I won't have that chance to input into my kids' lives whilst they are young, and they too won't learn how to prioritise. That was just someone in a coaching situation who went through that process just on one decision, and it just helped them solidify that decision. It kind of revolutionised their thinking. Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity to think about our lives at the beginning of a new year, and I pray that you would just call back to remembrance those things you want to say to each individual in this room today. Help us to live our lives aright, knowing that our days are numbered, not in a negative, scary way, but just to make the best and have an abundant life that you have planned for us. Help us not to get distracted by the sidelines and the sideshows and the things that vie for our attention so easily. Help us to know individually what is important to us and go all out for it. In Jesus' name. Amen.